none other than Christina Lias. She is our investment lead from Europe, our regional director for Europe North, and our business for the Department for Business and Trade. She will deliver an exciting keynote on the UK as a global green frontier. We'll then move on to hear from the different regions. So we're hearing from colleagues from London, from the north, called the Northern Powerhouse, and of course Scotland as well. They're all going to be talking about the different technologies available to support your growth in the UK and the different bits of packages that we've actually got for you. We're then going to go one step further and hone in on what this actually means for you. So there are different things available for startups, for scale-ups, and for investors. What we're going to try and do is cover that later on today. So, while I'm sure you all are dying to get into the actual material, it only seems right that I take one quick step back and first introduce who we are and what it is that we actually, or the department that's actually delivering this here today. So, first of all, the Department for Business and Trade is the organization that both Christina and myself are from. Well, the abridged version is really the Department for Business and Trade, or DBT, as you might hear it called today, is actually a government department that's responsible for making the UK the best place to start and to grow a business, delivering growth, increasing jobs, and really raising wages and living standards. Its remit extends slightly further to also include amplifying engagement between business and government, and strengthen our offer for the company's international investors, so a lot of you who are here joining in today. Having had a sneaky peek into some of the talks coming later, I will stop there because I'm sure somebody's going to talk about this later on. But beyond that, there are actually two campaigns that we're working together to deliver today's program. The first is the Going Green Together campaign. In short, against a geopolitical backdrop in which the importance of a connected Europe has never been more important, Growing Green Together is a platform of connecting Europe, covering digital, live, and webinars, such as what we're in today. The real aim in and around this is to connect businesses with the opportunities in energy, future cities, mobility, and of course, sustainable consumption. Lastly, we have the Venture Capital Matchmaking Program. Now, I'm going to abuse my position ever so slightly to be able to talk about this, just because across Europe, Central Asia, and Israel, it's actually me who's leading this as a program. So, in essence, we know that a growing company, when you set out and you want to grow, there's one of the two things that you're looking for. You're looking for new international markets, and you're looking for the finance to be able to do that. To really help you on your international journey, we try and connect you, overseas companies, with UK-based investors. And the way that we do this is really just trying to accelerate the movement into the UK and give you access to the finance, provide additional assistance such as access to portfolios that you might not have otherwise, and providing local market knowledge around the UK. We do this by actually connecting you in with investors that we're actually working with. We do this in a number of different ways, and one of the first things that we do is have a brochure on a bi-monthly basis. To be able to be eligible for this as a type program, all you have to do is be speaking with us and have your ambition to set up and grow into the UK. Aside from this, we actually have a couple of more aspects that we actually do. On a regular basis, when we're not doing an actual brochure, we try to do monthly lunch and learn sessions. These are sessions which are open to everyone, and it really gives you an opportunity to ask any questions or have any comments that you've always been itching to ask to an investor answered in a 1 hour short session. Now, the final thing that we actually do before I'm sure you've had enough of me is we actually do mini-series. So we work with select groups and help cover a few very specific issues that you yourself are struggling with your internationalization towards the UK, specifically with investors. Now, to drop a little bit of a spoiler, I'm sure if you stick around to the end, we've got an exciting announcement to make regarding the Venture Capital Matchmaking Program. Let's not forget that this is UK VCs that we're talking about, those who have actually raised in the 24 months up to 2022, $20 billion in dry powder ready to deploy. 3 billion of which they deployed in climate tech alone last year. So, before I pass on the mic to my esteemed colleague over here, I thought I'd go into a few of the housekeeping rules for today. So, for every session that we actually have, we're streaming this via Swapcard. At the bottom of every chat, you'll be able to have a live discussion. All of those questions, comments, and thoughts are actually going straight into me, so I'll be able to use my wonderful position as moderator to ask all of our different speakers directly. We also will finish off today's session with a little bit of networking. So anytime that you've actually had a moment to speak with any of you've heard something interesting from any of our speakers, you can actually book in a 5-minute session and actually follow up with them afterwards. The final little note to make, if at any point you have any issues with the platform, we have a few colleagues on standby to help out. So feel free to use the help desk tab. With all this out the way, I think it's about time that I pass on the mic and introduce our first speaker of the day. This is none other than Christina Leos, the European Investment League and Regional Director for Europe North at the Department for International Trade. So, Christina, over to you.
Thank you so much, Elias, and good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are in the Nordic and Baltic region, or maybe beyond the Nordic and Baltic region. Welcome to this Growing Green Together seminar about decarbonisation of the economy. As Elias says, I am Christina Schødt-Liaus. I am heading up the Department for Business and Trade in the Nordic and Baltic region, and I also lead on investments from Europe into the UK. What we're going to be talking about in this session is a little bit about the Department for Business and Trade. Who are we? What is this new department of the UK? Then we're going to talk about why the UK and decarbonisation. And lastly, we will talk about the Growing Green Together campaign that we are launching here in this region of Europe, and inviting you to join in our effort of the decarbonisation of the economy that we all work towards. But first of all, who are we as a department? I'm particularly interested in showing you this new logo, because the Department for Business and Trade is actually a really new department. We were launched just around a month ago. And what it is that we do, it is actually not a brand new department. It is the merger of two UK government departments, the Department for International Trade and the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And we have joined these two departments together. Prime Minister Sunak has done that in February, to bring the power of UK business together once and for all, to have all the levers of UK business in one place. So this new department has all the means to drive British business, but also reform regulation and make sure we take advantage of all the market opportunities that we see around the world. Because maybe you've heard that the UK vision, the vision for the UK is to be the best place from where to start and grow your business. So we bring together all the expertise from businesses and the world-class trade negotiations. We amplify the cooperation between business and government, and we are government, and we strengthen the offer to international investors who want to come and take advantage of this in the UK. We support investment, we unlock exports, we make new free trade agreements around the world, and we also make sure that we are supporting all of those companies that work from a base in the UK to operate internationally. So practically, that looks like people like Elias and myself and a raft of other people working for the Department for Business and Trade in British embassies around the world. We help with the export side of things, linking up UK companies with big projects and exciting developments on the decarbonisation front also in Northern Europe and in the rest of Europe. We make sure that we help drive supply chains and make sure that they are full and that we can meet the demand of businesses around the world with full supply chains. That's what we do on the exporting side. On inward investment, we assist European companies when they want to come and grow their business from a base in the UK. We work with new investors, like Elias was mentioning, from small startups to scale-ups to unicorns and very well-established companies as well. And we also work with existing companies in the UK that are perhaps coming from somewhere in Europe and want to do more R&D or other activities, manufacturing in the UK, making sure that they are linked up to all government policies around these issues. And lastly, we do market access and trade policy work. We are part of the free trade agreement negotiations. We make sure that they are informed about what's going on in the market. We work with companies when they meet barriers to trade and make sure that we help them resolve these barriers. So a lot of practical things are happening in the embassy. So please do, if you don't already work with us, do work with us if you have any UK angle to what you are doing in your company. Now, enough of Department for Business and Trade. This is who we are, this is what we do. We are your link into the UK government. Now, why would you talk to the UK when it comes to decarbonisation of the economy? Well, the UK has a plan for a green industrial revolution. We led the world's first industrial revolution, that's around 2 centuries ago, and now we have a plan to be the #1 in the world for green technology and finance. Our plan is to achieve the net zero carbon emission by 2050. We want to create new green jobs, around 250,000 of them in the UK, and we want to lead the world into a new green industrial revolution. And we have a roadmap for doing just that. And the road has already started. It's not a new roadmap. It's something that we are already working on. So in 2015, we signed the Paris Agreement alongside other 196 parties to legally bind the international treaty on climate change adopted. So that was in 2015. In 2020, we launched the UK's 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution, and we will talk more about that in this presentation, so you know what is this 10-point plan all about. We also hosted, of course, you know that, the COP26 conference in 2021, leading by example for delivering of the net zero. In this year, we will begin the hydrogen heating trials in local neighborhoods in the UK to adapt hydrogen. Next year, we will end the use of coal. And in 2025, we will reach 1 gigawatt of hydrogen production capacity in the UK. So really looking at hydrogen as a means to drive the decarbonisation. In 2030, we will end all sales of new petrol and diesel cars and vans in the UK. We will be phasing out fossil fuel and increase solar energy generation to 60 terawatt hours in 35. And by 2050, it's not the end of the road, but it's a big milestone, we will achieve the net zero economy. So very, very ambitious plan and road ahead for the UK in the decarbonisation industry. So I already mentioned the 10-point plan that was delivered in 2020. It has 10 points, of course. One of them, the first one, is about advancing offshore wind. A lot of what we do here is in offshore wind, because this part of the world, the Nordics and the Baltic region, we have a lot of expertise. Now so much so that the UK actually has imported and worked with some of the biggest companies from this region and has the biggest installed capacity of offshore wind in the world. So we are doing really, really well on that point one. Point number two, we want to drive the growth of low carbon hydrogen. We will hear later on from our colleagues in the UK regions, Scotland, but I also just spoke to colleagues from Northern Ireland last week when I met them about their hydrogen cluster over there. So there's a lot going on the hydrogen scene in the UK at present. Point number three is really exciting because we want to deliver new and advanced nuclear power. We work with a lot of the UK's own capabilities from companies like Rolls-Royce on small and modular reactors in nuclear, and we want to drive that also with other players in the industry. Point number four, we have already talked about it. We want to shift to zero-emission vehicles by 2030. No more sales of diesel and normal fuel cars, but but going into electrical vehicles and so on. 5, we want not just to be a personal decision, but also a public one. So green public transportation, which goes beyond the buses and the trains into how can we make sure that people, they move more, that they bike more maybe, which is what people, they do a lot here in this part of the world. So biking and walking and activating our population, point number 5. On point number 6, we know that a lot of the things that we consume and we do every day is imported, transported, we transport ourselves. So how can we green the shipping sector and the aviation sector? So that's working towards a jet zero economy and greener shipping ahead. Point number 7 is around how we live and how we work, making sure that our energy consumptions in buildings are more up to speed, that we actually know when we consume and can take conscious decisions about when we turn on light or heating and others. So a lot of sensor and smart technologies into greener buildings. Then point number 8, we want to invest in carbon capture, usage and storage going forward to capture the CO2 emission that is already there. Point number 9 is a really nice one. We want to do all this by protecting also the natural environment, making sure that we don't do more harm, and we will hear a little bit more about that into our environment. So really important point number 9. And finally, point number 10, we are working with the strengths of the UK, so the strengths of the City of London, the strengths of financing, and we want to make sure that we drive green financing and innovation as we go into this 10-point plan and beyond. So we have really smart ways of financing all of that. Right, let's go a little bit further into the 10-point plan altogether. I think you can feel it a little bit, but there are sort of 4 major themes. It's about the environment, it's about transportation, it's about the green economy, and it's about energy. If we just start about talking about the energy, which is a larger contributor, I think, we want to transition into renewable green energy sources. We want to make sure that we have the financial initiatives that are green and that can support that transition. We want to make sure that the economy is thriving from the top to the bottom, from the bottom to the top, so we can all make conscious choices about how we transport ourselves, what we do, and how we sort of organize ourselves as a society. And we want to do that by making sure that the environment is still protected. One of the initiatives in that front is the plantation of 30,000 hectares of trees every year between now and 2050, where we want to see a whole raft of new green spaces in the UK. Further down, we will look at the energy side. There are maybe 3 major areas. I think I've noted them already, but we want to lead the world as a UK in decarbonisation of the energy sector. Offshore wind will be sort of playing a major role, and that's where we've been putting a lot of emphasis in this region, the offshore wind as a critical source of renewable energy for the UK. There is loads of private investment going into the offshore energy space already, and we are thinking that around £20 billion worth of private investment will be driven into the UK economy in this space. That will save 5% of our UK emissions going forward, and create lots of jobs as well, which will most of these initiatives. Next on is low carbon hydrogen. That's a clean source of fuel and heat, and we want to bet on that. So there's a lot of investment going into hydrogen as well, and we will hear more about that from our colleagues from the regions who will talk about some of the initiatives they have there. And last, I already mentioned that nuclear is a source of energy that we will be looking at as the most reliable source of energy that we can find to drive the low carbon economy going forward. So working with Rolls-Royce, testing quite a lot of things. There's already a couple of projects we are working on from Europe with Hinkley and Sizewell C in the UK, where we are working with EDF from France, setting up major power plants. But this is also looking at small and modular ways of delivering nuclear energy to maybe some of the less essential places in the UK. So lots going on in energy. Moving on to the transportation section. We talked about it. The zero emission vehicles is where we want to put our bet. There's a lot of talk about not just the actual cars, but also the whole infrastructure, the investment in infrastructure that has charging stations and so on, battery stations, to make sure that we can have a full supply chain to service this new infrastructure. So zero emission vehicles, really big bet. Then we have the green public transportation. I mentioned that we are already exporting some of that green public transportation. Sweden, for example, have bought electrical buses from the UK recently. But that's not it only. We are also talking about biking lanes, smart traffic. How do we actually make sure that people and cars and buses and so on are connected in the right way? So it's also about consultancy, and it's about creating that right infrastructure. And then we talked about jet zero and green ships. We mean that this is the future of the aerospace industry. There's loads of tests going on in the UK in this field, and we mean that this can save a lot of the CO2 emission that we need to save by 2050. On the environmental side, we are talking about greening the buildings, not just the new ones, but also retrofitting the buildings that are already there, with a lot of private investment going into real estate in the UK, as you will know, and that will also save quite a lot of the CO2 emissions that we need to save, around 16% going forward. So it's adding up all of that. Carbon capture, usage and storage, new technology that we are implementing at the moment in the UK. Please be part of that journey. The government is putting around £1 billion into that public investment in the next couple of years. So this is really happening as we speak. And then there's a whole natural environment. We are working to look at the consequences of climate change, to protect the environment that we have, flood defenses and so on, and make sure that we have the climate and biodiversity that is needed to keep our green spaces there and grow them. Lastly, the green economy. We want to make sure that this is all funded in more research and development, more innovation, more new technology. So we want to raise the total R&D in the UK to 2.4% of GDP. So loads of investment going into research and development. And also all the enablers there, the green finance that I spoke about, that enables carbon savings across new technologies, new sectors, future sectors, existing sectors. So we are thinking very much out of the box and trying to figure every way that we can support this new industry and deploy all the expertise that we have already in the City of London for the financing side, but also in the catapults and the research centres and so on that we have around the UK. So what is it that the UK is doing to support decarbonisation? Apart from all the good plans that we have, we support decarbonisation altogether. Of course, we signed the Paris Agreement back in 15, and that, of course, helped us to think anew, what is it we need to achieve? How do we actually do this practically? So the UK introduced a number of special measures and policies to support this transition to a low-carbon economy, including a carbon price floor, which is a tax on carbon emission. That is an inspiration or a need, a challenge, but definitely a push to make sure that we keep that carbon very low. We also set a target to increase the proportion of electricity generated from renewable sources to 30% by 2030, which is really just around the corner, hence the lot of emphasis on offshore wind and everything that is being done there at the moment. We put a ban on new coal-fired power plants. We made a government program to insulate homes and improve energy efficiency. That's called the Green Deal. We made a target to increase the proportion of cars and vans that are ultra low emission by 2030. So we support decarbonization by our ambitions that drives industry as a consequence. We want to reduce our emissions by 80% compared to the 1990 levels, and that's a big number, 80%. So we are funding and leading R&D of innovative low-carbon technologies, and we support the decarbonization by both domestically in the UK and internationally with a collaboration such as the one we are going to talk about later on the Growing Green Together campaign. We are investing in renewables. We are promoting sustainable growth and energy-sufficient housing. We are promoting electrical, hydrogen, low-emission transport, and phasing out the use of fossil fuels and coal-fired power plants. A lot of things are going on in the UK, and we think that that's an opportunity. It's a challenge, but it's definitely also an opportunity. So the upside of decarbonization, of course, for any economy, and certainly for the UK, is the competitiveness that this drives, both for the existing industry, who can create efficiencies in their manufacturing, for example, that leads to competitiveness, but also because we are introducing new ways of thinking. We are thinking about the circular economy, we're thinking about the value chain. Maybe we want to reuse and repair products and, more than we have done in the past. Maybe we want to recycle. Maybe we want to look at industrial symbiosis. Where can somebody else's waste be my raw material? And this type of new ways of thinking. We want to target new net zero technologies. Carbon capture, usage and storage was one of them. Hydrogen, another one that we're making a big bet on. We want to make sure that we have new net zero manufacturing, allowing new technologies to come up and hopefully flourish. And we want to drive also low carbon services. There are new services in consultancy, in software, IP, and new services that we haven't really thought about before that suddenly comes to the fore with this new way of working. So the industrial strategy for decarbonization of the UK, it is our ambition to decarbonize the UK industry in line with the net zero targets that I already spoke about. So this industrial strategy that we have is a long-term plan to make the UK economy more productive and prosperous, and improving the business environment and investing in areas where the UK has a market and business potential. We have several objectives and aims and proceedings to support this industrial strategy. One of the things is a 1 billion fund for the new Clean Growth Fund. It's already been established, so there is 1 billion out there that companies can apply for if they have clean growth opportunities and ideas. We have also got a new independent body who will advise on climate change and what a certain industry effect is on the climate. We have created a £33 billion national infrastructure bank to lead some of these new projects, and we are supporting the development and deployment of low carbon technologies altogether. We are investing in renewable research and development of hydrogen, clean energy, and we have just launched a 100 million program to support the development of EVs, electrical vehicles. So that's our commitment to reduce CO2 emissions by at least 2/3 by 2035 and at least 90% by 2050. Really high number. So the UK is already a world leader in climate change technologies, and it has actively promoted decarbonization in various sectors of the economy. So that is ambitions. That is very ambitious, and we want you to join us to increase energy efficiency, invest in renewable energy, and reduce waste. So very briefly, key policies of the net zero strategy is to make sure that the UK is powered by clean energy in the future. Fuel supply and hydrogen, where the public will put lots of fund in there to increase the production. We want to have clean transport, protecting the national resources, and make sure that our industry are fit for purpose. We are leading the way, we think. These are some of the COP26 achievements that we got last year, 2 years ago it is now. So mitigation, we secured almost everyone. 153 countries were sort of coming together and did NDCs to strengthen the voice of everyone. We want to make sure we boost effort to deal with the climate impact. We mobilize a lot of pounds, and we will collaborate and work together to deliver that. So 4 reasons to trade with the UK: dedicated research and development funding, investment to reduce emissions, innovative funding program by the government, and world-leading expertise. So loads of reasons why you should talk to us. Now I just want to very briefly, and we will hear more about that, the Growing Green Together campaign that we have been running in the Nordic and the Baltic region here. We had the 8 markets over here coming together, thinking about what is it that we can do to change the world. We are also talking about the net zero, sustainability and decarbonization. We have the common grounds here with the UK and the Nordics and the Baltics. The same vision, the same challenges. How can we bring all this together and work together to use the experience we have, but also some of the policies and the levers we have to drive the journey towards decarbonization. We think that we have the best geopolitical backdrop in Europe right now, where there is a sense of urgency. And this Growing Green Together campaign is basically a business platform where we are bringing people together to make this thing happen. We see opportunities in 4 areas of the economy. In energy, I mentioned mobility, sustainable consumptions, and future cities. We see, I've mentioned already that we are working with the likes of Ørsted and Equinor to deliver really big projects on the offshore wind side in the UK. We see that consumers are increasingly not choosing or not choosing to buy a brand if they haven't got a sustainable way of thinking about their production and their sales. So we think there will be big opportunities in this area in the world. On mobility, Norwegian e-bikes are already fueling the bikes into Bristol in the UK, where Bike for Good is delivering the bikes. We have Starship from Estonia. It's small robots delivering pizzas in a really sort of low energy way in Milton Keynes in the UK. And we have VTEC supplying electrical buses to Sweden already, as I mentioned, and there's much more we can do. And then there's a tech and smart cities, and we'll be talking about that more today, where we see loads of companies with very innovative ideas about how we can minimize energy consumption and grow more energy. So what's in it for you? There's loads of things going on in the Growing Green Together campaign. I just show you here on my slide a snapshot of what's going on in this month of March. We are now the 16th, and we have the Decarbonising for Businesses event here in Copenhagen. But we also today have an event in Finland about future of mobility. We have offshore wind road shows, the Vasa Energy Week in Finland, and loads of things going on across Cambridge Ecosystem Exchange and England South by the end of this month. And we would love to work with you too. So please don't hesitate to contact us to discuss how you can join the Growing Green Together campaign. This is the QR code to the website that we have. We would love to work with you to decarbonize the economy both here and in the UK. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christina. That was fantastic. I think I was telling you beforehand that in another world or another life, I'd be a chat show host. And I would love to sit us down and have a massive conversation about that. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you for that. Next time.
Yes, that's a deal.
I think a couple of key points actually stick out for me. I was sitting there taking a whole load of notes. I mean, one of the key things really to drive home is DBT, Department for Business and Trade, are here to help and support. Reach out to us. It's free confidential advice that will help support and help you grow internationally. A core other thing in there was not only this plan for net zero by 2050, but also it's all good and well having a plan, but there was actually 10 key points in actually delivering that and driving it home. I think that's really, really great, really fantastic overall. I know I've got other colleagues waiting online to get into it really, but all of this is really, really brilliant in there. a little shout out to all of our audience there. Christina will be kicking around later on. If you would like to speak with her, connect with her, please do stick around for later on. We're going to be having our speed dating, where you'll be able to have a 5-minute session with Christina just to talk a little bit about who we are, what you are, what it is that you're actually doing, and ways that we can actually help and support you there. But for now, thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Elias.
No worries. That brings us very nicely on to our next session. So for the next 45 minutes or so, we're really going to try and build on what Christina was actually talking about. She spoke about that brilliant 10-point plan, the different activities that are actually going on in the UK, but we want to make this a little bit more concrete for you. We spoke about all of those different core areas. So we spoke about the environment, transport, energy, and offshore. But now we thought we'd actually go into a bit more of the nitty-gritty in terms of what the different regions in and around the UK have on offer for yourselves. And for that, I'm delighted to be able to introduce 3 brilliant people here today. 2 are joining online. That would be my colleague Bradley Regan, who works as an inward investment manager for London and Partners. I'm sure he'll tell you all about that in a minute. There is a second one who is Henry Merson. So he is the chief executive at the Northern Powerhouse Partnership. And joining me in person here today is Monica. She's going to hate me for this, you know, the amount of times I've said her name wrong. Izudork, who will be talking to you very shortly all about Scotland. But before we get kicked in or really get stuck into that, Bradley, are you there? Excellent, Bradley. Well, welcome. And with that, I give you the mic for the next 10 minutes, just to give a bit of an overview as to London and Partners, what it is that you do, and the core areas of specialisation there. So, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here virtually. Would have liked to have been in person, but
Can we,
on this occasion.
do we have some sound?
Can everyone hear me okay? So,
Yep, we can.
all good, yeah? Perfect. So my name's Bradley Regan. I work as an investment manager at London and Partners. For anybody who hasn't heard of London and Partners, we're the business growth and destination agency for London, partly funded by the Mayor of London's office. So our goal is essentially to promote London as a leading kind of city on a global scale for both business and tourism as kind of the main avenues there. So on the business side, as I mentioned, I work in an investment team, which is about supporting international companies, helping them set up in London and grow here. I work specifically with companies in Europe, and anything kind of under that sustainability sector, so anything to do with energy, clean air, mobility, property tech, for example. As an organisation, we do also such as industries and also financial services, for example. And then on the other side of kind of the business directorate that we have, we also support London-based companies grow internationally through our trade programs and kind of scale into new markets. Since we've kind of been an organisation since 2011, we've helped over 2,300 international companies set up and grow in London, which I think kind of gives a good overview of ultimately what we're trying to do and what I try to support with essentially. So if there's any companies in the audience that are interested in London and considering international expansion, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can see what I can do to try and help as much as possible.
Brilliant. No. Carry on. No, carry on, please. Sorry.
No. That was everything in terms of a background.
Brilliant. Did you want to spend a minute or two just to go into a little bit more about the offers in and around London? I know you were keen, beforehand, that we were speaking for ages about smart cities, sustainability and the like. Did you want to go into a little bit of that just now, or shall we wait for that juicy stuff later on?
No, of course, I'm happy to do that. So I guess there's a few points that I'd be keen to kind of highlight. So in terms of kind of the ecosystem in London, well, first of all, I should say that as mentioned previously, London has very strong and ambitious targets around sustainability, specifically a target to be net zero carbon by 2030. And I think that kind of showcases a desire as a city to become more sustainable. And this isn't just for business either, it's also for the public as well. There's a real kind of willingness to adapt and change there. But I think when people think about London, they think about, of course, there's strong access to corporates and international companies. There's lots of VCs here, world-leading universities, for example. But if you kind of look at things more specifically in terms of subsectors, as you mentioned, those subsectors like smart cities, mobility, and clean tech, there are real kind of specific opportunities for companies that operate in these spaces. So, for example, if you look at like the clean tech and climate tech kind of subsector, you have different organisations such as Sustainable Ventures, which is the largest clean tech hub in Europe that that invests in London-based companies and helps them grow. You also have organisations like London, which is an incubator hub around the circular economy. If you're looking at the transport side of things, you of course have Transport for London, which owns and operates all of the buses and tubes in London. And they also actually collaborate on a regular basis with startups and scale-ups through their open innovation hub to kind of face challenges that they're facing. Organisations such as the Smart Mobility Living Lab as well, which is an autonomous vehicle test bedding community, are doing great things there. And then if you kind of look at more the smart city side of things, you have different organisations, again, such as Connected Places Catapult, which is an innovation and accelerator hub for cities and transports and places. And then organisations such as New London Architecture, which operate within the built environment and kind of proper tech scene. So I think, regardless of your subsector, under that kind of wider sustainability umbrella, there's really good opportunities for businesses that can operate in that space in London.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant. And I think really that sets the ground of saying, you know, we started with London for a reason, to really say, you know, when you think of the UK, the first stop is typically London, and you've got a brilliant offer there for many different subsectors and the like. But I think this really drives home the message here today, that there are a number of different core regions in and around the UK, and you're all good at slightly different things. And I think that really opens up or gives us an opportunity to introduce our next speaker. Monica, again, you're going to hate me, you know, for this. I'm going to get in trouble, you know, off
just
camera.
Just Monica.
For now, he's just going to speak to us just for a couple of moments about Scotland and how that perhaps differs straight off the cusp in terms of a comparison to London. So, Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me here to talk about Scotland, the collaboration opportunities, and actually what is Scotland. So as we first started with London, I think it makes quite a lot of sense to move now to Scotland, which is basically the energy engine of UK. We are making waves in the climate change. You will see actually in my presentation in a moment, and have a very, very ambitious energy and decarbonisation agenda, which is actually focused on, point one of Christina's plan, offshore wind, but also creating hydrogen economy. And through attracting investments in these two main sectors, we hope to actually stimulate and attract also investments to the other parts of the economy. So let me start.
Have you prepared a few slides for us?
Yes, I did, but we are, I think, waiting for them to be shown. So maybe a few words about Scottish Development International, for which I work for. It is an organization like economic arm of the Scottish government, focused on attracting investment and also promoting trade. And myself, I'm from the trade section of it, the trade part. So on everyday basis, I work on helping Scottish companies to enter Nordic markets, and also make connections with their partners, be it in Denmark, Norway, and other Nordic countries. At the same time, we work in very close contact with my colleagues from investment team, which are focused on attracting investments. Scotland is a world-leading champion, basically, when it comes to ambitious targets. As Denmark, Scotland wants to be net zero by 2045. So basically the ambition is that we will have net zero emissions of all greenhouse gases. Then we would also like to build up a very strong pipeline of offshore and onshore wind projects. So the current amount of onshore only, it's 9 gigawatt. I think it's 2/3 of the whole what UK has. UK has 4. I think UK has 14 and we have 9. And then the ambition is actually to build it up into 20 gigawatt by 2030. Like in Denmark and many other countries, you know, our goals are somehow directed like from short term to 2025, then 2030 and 45, 50 later on. As Scottish Development International, we actively support in actually implementing those plans. For example, in looking at the supply chain, possibility of attracting investors to actually invest in our supply chain, offshore wind, hydrogen, and other parts of economy. And then at the same time to help the current companies that have been very much active in the oil and gas sector to move from oil and gas into low carbon, zero carbon technologies and to go into those markets. What is the added value of Scotland is, first of all, a very supportive business environment with organizations such as SDI, for which I work, but also the government, the Scottish enterprise. That is a very actually efficient and public administration, which does understand the business needs, I think, and also is very constructive about dialogue with businesses, with different types of partners from the private sector. Secondly, it's a very strong academic network. We spoke about ecosystem, so I think that one of the advantages of Scotland is actually the very robust ecosystem. There are 19 universities in Scotland, among them world-leading universities. And then, for example, universities like Glasgow, St Andrews and Edinburgh, they do participate actively in a number of low-carbon projects, green projects. And then we have also world-class innovation centers, which lead the way, stimulate the growth and deliver the projects that are necessary to have economic impact and green, and as the Scottish government likes to underline, the just transition. So we have actually the highest rate of universities spin-out companies in the UK, which is quite nice actually also to kind of look at Scotland as a region that is a very speedy one when it comes to green transition, very ambitious and very robust. What is the added value of Scotland is also that, well, we have the business tax rate, which is relatively low, 19%, the lowest in G20 countries. We have, as I said, supportive research and development structure, including 33% relief of applicable spend on tax credits. And then innovation grants. We have a whole system of basically innovation grants, which is both the UK system, which are we part of course, and then also we have some Scottish only programs. And also the additional advantage, for example, in investing in Scotland is that basically we have a very good base of people, so the human capital, multilingual, they're very diverse, basically. Not only Scots, actually the second, I come from Poland, and the second largest number in Scotland, I think it's Polish diaspora. But then we have, of course, plenitude of others. So it's this diversity that you have, which is in play and which is actually contributing to Scottish economy. Then we have also, well, relatively cheaper than, for example, in London, housing prices. So that also attracts people and then investment. And stable, secure, and predictable framework for investment also into green transition. So I think the slides will be sent to you later on. I'm using them to support what I'm saying, but I think you would just basically get them all afterwards, including the contact to my Scotland-based colleagues, because myself, I'm based in Denmark, leading the cooperation on trade among the Nordic countries, between Scotland and the Nordic countries. But then I do have also colleagues which are able to tell you more about the investment policy, and also contact with relevant people.
Brilliant. No,
yeah.
I think that's really, really interesting. You know, just coming back to, so that we've got something to compare against with Bradley. I mean, Bradley was talking a little bit more. I think I was feeding him ever so slightly as well, with the idea of mobility, transport, smart cities. If you are a company outside listening to us, that perhaps that's a great place for in London. What would you say then the core thing to the audience is, who's best to come up and set up in Scotland? What are your core strengths and which industries within?
I think it's the same as London. In a way, it's like these are UK-wide trends. So Scotland obviously is part of UK, and you know, they trend towards green mobility, electric buses, and electric transport in general. The hydrogen-based solutions. It's general. It's UK-wide. So of course, if you are interested, you can come to Scotland. You can establish your company. There are several funds available. So, for example, there is Zero Emission Mobility Fund available in Scotland. So you can also use different types of support. What is interesting to mention, for example, Scotland was one of the first regions to experiment with hydrogen trains, for example. So one of those projects was actually presented at Glasgow COP. So there are quite a lot of research centers, institutions that you can turn to, and partners that you can actually cooperate with.
Brilliant, brilliant. I was actually trying to lead you down to say that Scotland is brilliant and has huge strengths in the whole decarbonisation, offshore wind and the like, but it's also great to know that there are numerous options available for the audience out there, depending on the types of sectors that they actually have. Before we go into answering some of those question and answers, well, I see they're flooding in. And guys, as a reminder for those who perhaps are a little bit shy just now, feel free, at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a live discussion. Pop in your questions, pop in your comments in there, and I'll be sure to ask them very shortly. We have one more speaker on the line. It's calling in Henry. Hello, Henry, are you there? You know, there's the joys of technology that we're having a few issues in here today. But what we can actually do in the meantime then is start to jump in to this conversation, both with Bradley and with Monica here, and start to jump into one or two of the different questions that we've actually got that came up. So I know that we touched a little bit about the funding opportunities both in Scotland and in London, but then perhaps we can jump into a slightly different thing where we start talking about the target, so that race to net zero by 2050. What sort of trends are you seeing that are developing in both Scotland and, Bradley, if you're there as well, in London, you know, that sort of underpin this whole idea of sustainable businesses? I don't know who wants to go first.
Maybe I can start with when it comes to ambitions and targets. So you were asking about offshore wind. So we do have ambitious offshore wind projects pipeline. So within the next few years, we would like to actually build up, I think directly it's 8 or 9 gigawatt right now, which are in the pipeline. We just had finished the round of seabed licensing. So for I think about 25 gigawatt of projects altogether. So it's a huge amount of projects of energy to actually acquire in the future, and that actually creates a certain pipeline of projects that we hope will contribute to the supply chain. So by 2030, we will have about 20 additional gigawatt of offshore capacity, and that also comes to hydrogen. By 2030, we aim at having 5 gigawatt of production capacity potential for hydrogen. So it is quite high, or actually even higher than the UK ambition. And then 25 gigawatt by 2045. So actually what Scotland's ambition is to be the engine of not only UK, actually, it's to be the energy engine of Europe in general, and the North Sea. That's what we hope for.
Blimey, those are some big, I don't know how you're going to try and follow that, Bradley. That's some really impressive facts and figures just there. So I think that's really, really interesting in that. I don't know if you wanted to come in for a second there, Bradley. Otherwise, I've got bags of questions, to build on on top of that. But I don't know if you wanted to say a quick word there.
Yeah, of course, no problem. So yeah, I guess talking about kind of targets, as we kind of mentioned previously, London has some very ambitious targets around net zero, so net zero by 2030, net zero waste by 2050, for example. And there's a number of kind of different things that have kind of been done to help us achieve those goals, essentially. So one example of investment is the Mayor of London's Green New Deal Fund, which launched in November 2020. And that's an investment of £10 million into programs that will help support thousands of green jobs and help kind of tackle different climate and ecological kind of issues and emergencies that take place in the capital. Earlier this year as well, actually, the Mayor of London also launched a new Green Skills Academy, which is designed to provide training in different green areas, including retrofits, solar renewable energy, and EV and low carbon transports. One other thing I would mention is, in general, in order to achieve these targets, investments will be needed into London-based companies, but also international companies that are looking at expanding into London. We're going to need new infrastructure, innovative solutions from sustainability-focused SMEs. In order to reach this goal. So I'd say there is a huge opportunity here now and in the foreseeable future to kind of grow and be a part of that journey. And more public and private collaboration will be needed in order to achieve that. One example that kind of comes to mind is if you look at electric vehicles. So from 2030, you won't be able to buy new petrol or diesel vehicles. It will be only new electric vehicles. So we need to kind of electrify a lot by that time. So with that, there becomes huge opportunities because there's going to be a lot more need for charging infrastructure. So if you're an international company that provides a solution like that, for example, just one example, there will be a huge opportunity here to kind of tap into that and grow. So just wanted to make that point there.
Super, super interesting, I think that. And just off the bat, I'm going to try and wrong foot you, both of you, just here, because one of the things that you actually just said was about this drive towards 2030, and particularly in and around battery tech, the electrification of cars and the like. And it stopped and made me think there for a minute about the wider picture of sustainability in there. And when this is the $1 million tricky question just here, is how does the plans in and around the UK recycling as well tie into this wider Going Green Together campaign? And are there various different opportunities for companies in that as well? I don't know who wants to come and pick up, otherwise it's always something that we can try and pick up a little bit later on. as you are here, I'm going to throw you under.
Well, actually, when it comes to recycling, I must honestly say that I am not an expert.
No problem at all.
Drive to sustainable economy and sustainability is a very strong drive in Scotland. What I can tell you is that we do have quite a strong ambition to basically rethink the way economy is operating, absolutely, of course, towards sustainability, recycling, but also going towards hydrogen economy. I think that among our audience are some partners from research institutes and including hydrogen associations. So that might be interesting, actually, what Scotland is doing and how much we are at the forefront of actually applying some real solutions, energy and hydrogen solutions, and then how much actually the focus there is on basically, like changing, going into hydrogen economy, basically, from offshore wind and onshore wind, green energy sources, into production of hydrogen and then distribution and using it in different businesses, basically.
Fantastic, fantastic. I like how you dealt with that rather thorny question that I just threw at you there. I don't know if you wanted to add in anything, Bradley, in that. And if not, I know, but carry on, please.
No problem. Yeah, I guess organisations I mentioned earlier, Re-London being one. It's a partnership with the Mayor of London, with London boroughs to improve waste and resource management in and around London. So I'd say organisations like this kind of showcase how we're trying to change in that sense. I think a lot of it is kind of perception and kind of learning, and for people to understand what they should be doing in order to kind of make change, really. So that would kind of be my point in that.
Brilliant, brilliant. I've just had a little whisper in my ear to say that our third speaker of the day has overcome those technical issues and has managed to get in. And we'll try this again. Henry, how are you?
Lovely to join you. I'm so sorry I'm late joining you in.
No worries at all, no worries at all. I think what we can do is, if you want me to just pass over the mic over to you just for a moment to perhaps introduce the Northern Powerhouse and tell us a little bit about the core strengths, really, that you've got over there. And then we can just bring back that conversation and I can throw some tricky questions at you for a couple of minutes. So you've got a couple of minutes there. Do you want to just give us a short introduction as to not only who you are, what it is that you do, and the strengths that the Northern Powerhouse has?
So the Northern Powerhouse is the region north of England, including, in this space, some huge assets. So we have real strengths in energy and net zero. And I think that deployment already of offshore wind technology and the expertise in places like Grimsby, in servicing and making the assets work best, is seen alongside some of those huge capabilities that are growing. And yesterday, in the UK government budget, we saw a commitment to small modular reactors, which will create huge opportunities in the supply chain, with businesses like Sheffield Forgemasters, who are also a key part of many of our defence supply chains, going to really benefit and thrive on the back of that announcement. And we're really lucky today to have, later in the session, one of our colleagues from the northeast of England, which is one of those areas that has been at the forefront of this emerging strength. And I think what I would say, particularly on those assets, is the fact that actually we have British Bolts, which has been acquired now, a new owner from Australia, which is going to develop an ambitious project in Blythe. We also have the opportunities there of our port assets, mirrored by those like the Freeport on the Humber, Birmingham, and Hull with its blade factory for Siemens. And those same capabilities also exist on Teesside and in the Liverpool City region. And I'm really excited that actually clean tech is a huge opportunity specifically for Newcastle to define itself. And here at Nice, MIPIM this week, we've been hearing a lot about some of the investments going to come to help enable some of that and make this a great ecosystem for startups that want to come and base themselves here. So I'm really enthusiastic that this is a huge opportunity to attract businesses to this part of the world, to create ecosystems that people can become part of. And because of the scale of what we've got in the north of England, genuinely provide some of that world-class expertise in net zero. That when it's been tried here, whether it's on carbon capture, use and storage projects, on the Humber and the Tees Valley and Heine in the northwest, or whether it's on hydrogen projects, that businesses that come here, that play a part in this huge opportunity, will be well positioned, whether it be in the States or in Europe, to be able to have demonstrated what they can achieve and then be able to scale up and deliver that capability globally, deploying the talent and opportunities that they put to the test here in the north of England.
Brilliant, brilliant. No, that sounds absolutely fantastic. And just to really build on that and give you the same question that I asked two of your other colleagues who are from other regions, how do the targets that have been set out by that ambitious plan of where it is that we're actually looking to go to have guided or underpinned the investment in your region? I know you have touched on
the opportunity.
Yeah, sorry.
So the opportunities are massive. And what we can demonstrate is that having made some really ambitious commitments, the UK is moving forwards and actually starting to deliver some of the technologies that will be needed. And I think there's sometimes a bit of confusion that we have to go straight to the 2050 outturn position, when in reality, targets are never going to be met without some of those transitional technologies. And in hydrogen, we just need to decarbonise it. Whether it's entirely green hydrogen or not is not the point. If it's decarbonised hydrogen, then we need it. Because to support our heavy industrial base in the north of England, from glass factories in China to the steel industry in Scunthorpe, it's essential to us to be able to protect jobs, to bring these technologies forward. So for the north of England, net zero isn't just about a target out there in the ether. It's fundamentally about real jobs in the wider economy. And what we're hoping is that businesses that come here to innovate, to become part of our critical supply chains, can help then deploy globally to be able to help other heavy industrial clusters like the Humber, one of the most polluting in the UK, to still retain its industrial excellence, but do so in a way that doesn't negatively affect our climate.
Super. Well, no, that sounds absolutely brilliant. And just coming back to one of the key things there. So we've heard sustainability, smart cities, mobility, and the like from London. Again, a few of the same things going on in Scotland, and then really the focus in and around industry in the north, the Northern Powerhouse. I think a real question then is perhaps we can just walk very quickly through a couple of concrete examples of what does support sound like, what does it look like, and a quick, names drop, if you like, of some projects that we've recently worked with, or some exciting companies. And I know that, again, Monica, she's standing here right next to me, and I'm giving her a hard time, but perhaps you want to just give us a quick example.
I can actually give a few examples, both
please
in
do.
Scotland and also when it comes to international cooperation. So you ask how the support look like. I think thanks to, for example, Innovate UK and the whole ecosystem of research and development support and grants that are both available at the UK level, but also at the Scottish level, we are able to experiment, and actually experiment in a way that will enable us to achieve economies of scale in the future. So one of the exciting technologies in Scotland right now that Scotland is looking and hope to be a global leader is tidal energy. So it's basically getting the energy from the waves and from the sea. And this is something that actually is happening right now. We have one of the leading research centers near Edinburgh. I've met recently with the company who's working on it, Motion Energy, and they do expect to come to the market with some ready-made solutions in 2-3 years. And this is something that actually we do have a chance to, as Scotland, as UK, to be the leaders in. Another example is floating wind. We talked a bit about the onshore, offshore wind ambitions, the recent round that was announced in January. So 65% of the projects that have been now allocated will be floating wind, which means that actually Scotland will be the place where everyone will come and experiment with floating wind technologies. So that's another example. But also we mentioned before today's discussion, we spoke about digitalization and digital technologies. So like, of course the climate tech and all the digital solutions, also digital solutions for energy. So we have actually in Scotland leading companies and basically leading also universities, research centers when it comes to, I think it's called deep tech and deep math solutions, very complicated, advanced mathematical, basically modeling and thinking. So for example, recently I spoke with Think Tank Math, which is a company consisting of university PhD people, basically nerds, you know, who are providing really advanced and tailored solutions to the space sector, but also now to the energy sector. So I think, you know, both on Scottish level, but also on the UK level, we do have the advantage of financing in the country, like of support system, research and development, financing to a scale that quite a few countries can match, but also speed. If you look how fast those solutions are being developed and how fast actually the government can adjust and support them, that is also something attractive, I think, and worth, and that's why actually it makes it worth to work with us.
I think you've glimpsed that question that has come through when you're talking about speed, but I'll come back to that in just a minute. That sounds brilliant. And Bradley or Henry, have you got a quick example that you could give of a company that you've actually worked with recently, the types of support that you've offered, just so that a few of our viewers can get a bit of a feel of what it's like and the companies or projects that you work with? So who would like to go first?
Yeah.
There you go.
Let's kick off. Yeah, of course. So there's a couple of companies, I guess, that come to mind. One would be a company called Lookbook, which some people may have heard of. So they operate in the kind of sustainable packaging space. And they actually won one of the Earthshot prizes in 2022 under the category Waste-Free World. So they'd be one notable one. We've also worked with lots of different companies kind of under that sustainability umbrella. So for example, Olio and Oddbox, if anybody's heard of them, so kind of under that food waste kind of subsector. Companies in the energy space such as Equilibrium, a company called Climato that we've worked with recently around kind of sustainable food reporting. So on their website, of course, there's more on kind of our alumni companies that we have worked with, but yeah, we've worked with a good variety of companies within that kind of sustainability umbrella, and that cover kind of different subsectors, whether that's helping them set up in London, connecting them with the ecosystem and helping them grow here, or helping London-based companies grow and expand as well.
Super, super. And of course then that brings me over to you then, Henry.
No, it's a huge range, right? So our inward investment agencies from Midas in Greater Manchester, Newcastle Gates Initiative up in the northeast, working with a wide range of businesses all the time. I think a couple of examples I would give have been are really some of the sort of mega projects which are genuinely creating those huge supply chains. And I think what is really exciting about HyNet partnership, which has brought together businesses seeking to decarbonise, is that Progressive Energy, who are one of the partners there, for example, have been able to bring together a coalition of major European businesses, but also a number of new entrants who want to play a part in that carbon capture and hydrogen ecosystem. So there is a part, I think, for a variety of players, as well as established FDI investors like Enter, I mentioned, who make bottles for Diageo now, will be decarbonising the glass supply chain. Really exciting business, creating opportunities as well for those that can supply technologies to them to form part of their industrial solution. And I mentioned earlier the Gigafactory in Blyth is probably the most significant net zero project in the UK right now. And Scale Facilitation, who I mentioned, Australian business with important links in the US in particular, have really put forward an ambitious and deliverable plan to complete what is a hugely ambitious project. And I would also say there are some real disruptors as well. So people like hybrid air vehicles who want to bring airships to the transportation space.
Brilliant.
So I would say there are a real range of businesses. And I've just been today actually here at MIPIM with businesses like Munro K, who are putting together on their campus in Leeds the opportunity for people to trial their smart city technologies. So there are places here as well to welcome some of those disruptors, some of those who want to experiment, to have those places where they can do that in an environment with the support, in that case, of Leeds University and Nexus.
Super.
But absolutely, the other universities in the north, very similar opportunities, and Sazam in Sunderland, which is bring forward some of the real innovations in automotive, is a great example of something in the northeast, which will really support the existing Nissan supply chain, but also bring new businesses to the region to help solve those real life problems of how, as we electrify vehicles, we lightweight them suitably.
Excellent, excellent. I think that gives us just enough time for me to try and cheekily squeeze in one of the questions, and if there is a chance, I'll try and squeeze in one of the others. I saw in the chat that somebody popped in about the UK's ability and the speed of technology being adopted in. I know that Monica just touched on that, and they were really looking at, it's a bit of an open question, really, about how does the speed of technology and how the UK adapts to new technologies being introduced all of the time help with investing. You know, as a wonderful example here in the chat is talking about, it actually goes on a little bit about the fins for wind turbines, and you're very well positioned sitting just next to me or standing just next to me to perhaps talk a little bit about that. So as you did mention it very briefly, do you want to just spend a minute talking about that?
I think, you know, it's not only speed, but also the ability to scale up. Mm-hmm. So first, there's a number of experimental projects developing, and then UK, Scotland has this ability to actually scale them up, also thanks to the support system and ecosystem that is there. The human capital that I mentioned before, also that we have the people who can do it. We do have the engineers, we do have the scientists who are driving this green transition, because it's all about people after all as well, that we the ones who can do it. So yeah, I think it's pretty fast. We have a number of companies that actually also collaborate. So I think that contributes to that fact that the collaborative culture, the ability to outreach and to build partnerships, and also since we have quite a number of people in the audience from different countries, it's also collaborative approach across borders, because it's not only collaboration in Scotland, in UK, but it's the will and the ability to collaborate across borders. So give me like one example of a company, digital company, Aventus AI, which have digital solutions, and they have well, quite an amazing product when it comes to operation asset management and cutting costs and so on. They do collaborate with a number of countries, like partners from different countries across the Baltic region. For example, one is in Poland, so they have a partner in 3D printing, if I remember correctly, in Poland. And then they have a number of partners in other countries. So that also kind of contributes to the fact that they are able to enter the market in a fast way and build up their product as well.
Absolutely. So, I mean, just keeping one eye on the time just there, I think, you know, just really summarising that point that you just made, and I'm really sorry we haven't got enough time to continue that with both Bradley and Henry, but the UK is really that launch pad. We have a number of different offers for you based on which subsector of technology you actually fit in. We've got soft landing plans, programs, and we've actually got a team, be that in London, be that in the South, be that in the Midlands, North, or in Scotland, to actually help you scale your business. And not just to scale and grow into the UK, but then afterwards, as we've just heard, there's the technology, there's the infrastructure to help you take that business and scale across the world. We've heard a load of really, really interesting things, and it's, as I stand here just now, my glass is out of water. So what we'll do now is just have a short break for the next 10 minutes and reconvene here at past, I believe, and then we'll go into the nitty-gritty of actually saying what is the offer on the table for startups, for scale-ups, and for investors. Thank you.
What is progress? Progress is the space between where we've been
They really were touching on the sort of limits of aviation possibility.
and where we're going. Progress is the need to grow, to build, to innovate. Progress is the destination and the journey. It's about forward motion and forward thinking, delivering bigger, smarter, greener growth. Greener design, greener living, greener industry. So you better be ready, because progress moves fast, and once it starts, it's unstoppable. But it's also an opportunity to be part of history in the making.
This project is an attempt to go break the world electric speed record. And I can't think of a better way of demonstrating just how fast this technology is moving and how soon this is going to be in everybody's lives.
What progress needs is a vision, a direction, leaders who can see things differently, partners who can do things differently. And above all, progress needs a home. A place with the right skills, the right spirit, where innovation and creativity thrive. A land to lay the foundations for a future that is more sustainable, secure, and resilient. A place where good ideas become great.
Who is driving the clean transport revolution on the road to zero emissions by 2050? With a £5 billion blueprint for cleaner, greener public transport. Which country is ending the sale of petrol and diesel cars by 2030? Invented the lithium-ion battery, is home to Europe's first mass production battery factory for electric vehicles, and is developing the next generation power cells at the world's most advanced open access facility, acting as the global hub for innovation and collaboration in high performance engineering for planes, trains and automobiles. Where will you find 80% of the world's top motorsport engineers, 7 out of 10 F1 teams, the home of Formula E and Extreme E, and has the world's fastest rate of decarbonisation with Green Grid that powers the whole mobility supply chain? Who is creating the world's first pop-up airports for flying cars and is pioneering wind assistance to ship goods across the world's oceans, reducing fuel consumption of ferries by up to 90%, navigating the Atlantic using AI and autonomous vessels, sailing ahead with high-speed propulsion to net zero by 2050. Where can you find the world's first hydrogen digger, the first ever fleet of hydrogen double-decker buses, the world's first autonomous tractor, and is decarbonising food production with precision robots? Who is propelling the jet zero revolution with the world's first hydrogen aeroplane, and was Amazon's test bed for drone delivery? Where will you find the power behind the world's clean transport solutions? We're the UK and we're ready to trade with you.
Which was the first country to commit to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050? Which country has the largest offshore wind capacity and will build 40 gigawatts of offshore wind power by 2030? Who has attracted a record number of offshore wind investments? Where can you find the world's largest wind farms and the first commercial floating wind farm? Which country is analysing the science of the wind and the seas? Designing and building the future of offshore wind. Where will you find a workforce with 20 years of industry experience? With operations and maintenance skills established on more than 40 operational wind farms. Who has hundreds of years of marine expertise. Which government is collaborating with industry and has a £1 billion net zero innovation portfolio to develop tomorrow's green energy solutions today? We're the UK, and we're ready to trade with you.
space between where we've been.
Hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you had a nice little break. Just as a bit of a recap, this morning we've heard from a couple of great speakers. Christina kicked us off this morning, or this afternoon even, with a short overview as to what the UK does, the different policies and the roadmap to really get to this decarbonisation. We then heard a little bit more from the given regions. We heard from Scotland talking about the different offshore capabilities. We heard a little bit about the Northern Powerhouse talking about the industry. It was a really interesting conversation overall with the different regions, and also from London talking about mobility, sustainability and the like. Really, really great things. The main message really being that DBT is here. There is something for everyone. And now really going one step further for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to start jumping into the nitty-gritty of what that actually means for startups, for scale-ups, and for investors looking to get a slice of the action. For that, I have three wonderful guests who are joining me online. And I know that we've been having our fair share of technical issues this morning, or this afternoon even. Well, hopefully we can overcome some of them. Talking about startups, we have none other than Olivia Subudi. Talking about scale-ups, I'm delighted to have Alpesh Patel. And talking about investors, we have Shantanu Bhagwat. So to kick things off, we're going to start off with none other than Olivia Subudi. Olivia, are you there? Oh, hello Alpesh, how are you?
Hi, I'm not there.
While we're just going through that a quick technical issue, a quick reminder that in the bottom of the actual chat, we actually have space where you can actually pop in any questions or comments about the given session. Again, another reminder in there that as part of this event, we're running a speed dating session. At any point, you can book in a meeting, a 5-minute meeting in for later on this afternoon to actually speak with any of the different participants that have been there today. Be that myself, Christina, any of the different regions, and any of the different people who are here today in our session. Now, starting things off, I hear a little whisper in my voice. We've got Shantanu. Hey, Shantanu,
Hello.
how are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm just hoping everyone can hear me and see me all right.
Excellent, excellent. So with that, I'll give you the floor for a couple of minutes just to perhaps introduce yourself and the very interesting things that you're doing over at the Venture Capital Unit.
Sure. So thank you, Elias. And unfortunately, I cannot be there in person, but I think this is a wonderful opportunity to share with all of you what we do here as part of the venture capital team at DIT. The team has been around for almost 9 years now, and historically has worked with international institutional investors to support them, to encourage them to invest more in UK. And this activity in the last couple of years, we have decided also to include the Scandinavian region in this activity, which historically this has been more focused on US and Asia, as you can imagine. But since last few months, we have noticed the level of activity and the interest in the region among investors in that region. And we also had a short visit earlier in the year to actually meet with several people in person. And as a consequence of that, I offered to share some thoughts on what we do and how we can work with the investors who are present at this conference, at the event. So the work, essentially what we do, I think, can be simply captured in terms of matchmaking at its very basic level. And that is sharing selected, curated deal flow with investors who are looking at UK investment opportunities. And I want to emphasize that this deal flow is not just a random list of companies scraped off the web, but actually is supported by a strong team of industry professionals who work with our team alongside. And together, and then with references from other funds and investors in the UK, we create long lists of companies in particular sectors. And then within that, there is a filtering and a curation process. And that leads to a short list of companies which we then share with investors who would be interested in that sector and that stage of company. So this work is very selective. It is not meant to spam people with sending them deals which are of no relevance or consequence. These are filtered, and as you said, a lot of work goes into it actually before anything reaches the investor. So that's a big part of what we do. The other things that we do, and this also is relevant for investors who may be looking to expand into UK, is to offer them assistance in setting up an office, relocating someone, connecting them with the broader ecosystem. So that's advisors, intermediaries, recruiting firms, and then also guiding them in some basic things like opening a bank account and things like that. So there's a lot of that. So that work comes under, is usually about a quarter of our work falls in that category, where we are simply making it easier for international investors to actually invest in the UK and overcome some of the common hurdles that they may face. So that's the work, and I'll be delighted. I'm staying back for the speed dating. Delighted to share more for those of you who are interested. We have today over 200 investors in our network with whom we are in very frequent and regular contact across the globe. Most of these are venture firms, but there are also many corporate VCs and strategic investors, as you can imagine. The team is small, so we are resource stretched, and we focus therefore on specific sectors and stage. The sector focus is at the moment deep tech, clean tech, and life sciences, and clean tech, of course, is a key part of today's deliberations. So that is one of our key sectors too. And in terms of stage, we look at companies that are raising anywhere between 4 million to 40 million pounds, with of course some exception on either side. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what we do, how we can support. But feel free to ask questions now or after the event, or reach out to me. And we'll be delighted to tell you more and work with you. So I'll pass on to Elias here. Hopefully I haven't overstepped my time, Elias.
No, absolutely not. It's absolutely brilliant. I've got a quick question in there, and my apologies if I did miss it. For our audience out there, is there any prerequisites? So who is actually eligible for this as a program that you've got? It sounds brilliant, in there. That's part. Well, that's real. Let's leave it at that. Who's this program that you run eligible for?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. And as I said, hinted previously, we mainly work with institutional investors. Okay, so that would eliminate angels and so on, but also because the deals that we look at typically are too large for angels and angel funds. So these would be institutional funds. There would be corporate VCs as well. But they would very rarely be individuals. That doesn't mean that we are going to say no just because someone is an individual but still very keen on UK. So we'll try and work with them and support as well as we could. But most of our work is institutional focused, and that's largely driven by the background of the team and the kind of companies we look at. But really, that shouldn't stop anyone from approaching us and asking if we can help. I always encourage people to ask for help, because the worst response you can get from our team is we do not know, or this is something we cannot help with, but there's no cost to asking, as you all know. So yeah, hopefully that clarifies a little bit.
Brilliant. That sounds really interesting overall. I think as an introduction, that sounds great. I've got a whole load of questions flooding in, but before we start jumping into the nitty-gritty in and around that, I'll bring on to my second on the stage, the second of my speakers at the moment, Alpesh, and I know you do know Shantanu quite well.
We do. We go back a long way.
Yes.
Brilliant. It's a small world overall.
Even though we're both in our 20s, we've known each other.
Honestly, I need to get that same moisturizer that you two are both using,
I forgot my diet.
But brilliant. Thank you so much for joining here today. And perhaps you can just spend a moment where you introduce yourself and what it is that you're actually doing, which hat you've got on. Sorry, I'm losing my words there.
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to give the slide presentation now or a bit later on?
Oh, yeah, by all means. Feel free to go ahead.
In that case, I'll share my screen because it's probably the best way then to introduce myself, actually.
Brilliant.
Through the medium of a PowerPoint. Now, I'm one of the deal makers within the Global Entrepreneur Program, and Liv's going to tell you more about that program, how we work with scale-up tech companies around the world to help them go global from the UK. As one of the deal makers over the last, I've been there since 2005, so as long as I've known Shantanu, about 18 odd years. And one of the things that I've noticed, or several things I've noticed about companies which have scaled up and been successful is what I want to share with you over the next 10 minutes. And happy for you guys to be given this presentation later so you can mull over it. First of all, the companies which have done the best and been the most successful that we've worked with, the ones like Carbon Clean Solutions, which have raised millions and millions of money, or Builder.ai or Nutmeg, which sold out to JP Morgan, they were the best at networking. And if you're not good at networking, I'm not going to teach you in this short 10-minute presentation, but learn about it. One of the best places, Harvard Business Review, are really good at talking to professionals about that. You need to get better at it. Your whole team needs to get better at it if you're not already outstanding and excelling at it. The next thing, speaking of networking, do connect with me on LinkedIn and the other people you're going to hear from, because it's a great way to network and keep in touch and see what we're doing and see what government's doing as well. One of the ways in which I tell the companies I'm working with to open doors, and as you know, warm introductions are always the best. However, we in the Global Entrepreneur Program don't know everybody, okay? Don't know everybody, and therefore, sometimes what we've got to do is just send an email from our government account, and hopefully that's a semi-warm introduction for you to meet a potential investor or meet somebody in a potential customer. And some of the tools that are good for finding those individuals, job titles, email addresses, are things like Lucia, for instance. But if you haven't already got a spreadsheet with who your target companies are, what the job title of the person you need to speak to is, and what their email address is, then what are you doing? And that spreadsheet needs to have probably about 100 names on there. When we were raising money, and all the deal makers are business people. So I come from the asset management business. I run a hedge fund, a private equity firm, and we've just recently launched a tiny little venture capital firm. So for us, when we were raising capital, we had that list and we had to go through it. There is no shortcut. It is boring. It's dull. It's a bit of a grunt work, but you have to do it. So you need to build that out. And then we can help you, because we might say, oh, I know 5 of those, or I don't know those, but at least if I send an email from the government account, if you're part of the Global Entrepreneur Program, which, as I said, Liv will talk more about. You'll also have something like this: investor research. Which are the organizations, what type, who are the key investors, are they investing, what's the value add, thesis, competitor investment, engagement. It has to be thorough. I didn't actually create this one. Somebody else did, and I thought, this is phenomenal. This is what it should look like. And then the calendar, like I said, this presentation, the team, Elias and the team, will make available to you afterwards if you wish. And it needs to be this thorough, methodical, and professional. And there's another reason for that. When you contact us, if you haven't got something like this, then obviously we're going to think, well, wait a minute, you just want us to do all the heavy lifting. Whereas if you've got something like this, then we know, okay, wow, these are people we really want to work with. And those are the most successful companies we've worked with. They've had things like this. So we know they've got their eye on the ball, they can get results. And then the closing process. Now, by the way, I hate doing this. When I was raising capital for our own fund, going to family offices, high net worths, institutional investors like pension funds, I hate doing stuff. I mean, I don't know about you, but I generally don't like filling in Excel spreadsheets. And it's one of those things that don't feel bad if you absolutely hate the whole capital raising and scale up process. Don't worry about reading this, recording this. We've got some data on the stages people are at, how much they raise at those stages. It's important you know this, so you don't sort of misallocate your time and resource to the wrong stage of capital raising, or raise too early or raise too late. And also how quickly people get rejected. All this data we can make available to you as well. These are some of the companies I've invested in. And they're not obviously great Global Entrepreneur Program companies, because we're not allowed to invest in those due to conflict of interest. These are third-party companies independent of our program. But the reason I say I've invested in them is to share with you, well, what did they have that made me think, right, I want to put money in that? And I'd say the most important factor I've seen of scalable, successful companies, the ones that are going to do incredibly well, is traction. Traction, momentum. See those figures? More than 250,000 users, save more than 160 million. Big numbers. Now, we'll dig deeper into those numbers, but big numbers, traction, catch our attention, catch my attention as an investor. Graphs like that which show growth. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, if I've got graphs like that, I don't need anybody's help, I'm just laughing. Well, you might have other areas where you've got growth. Whatever it is, show that traction. It might be on, I don't know, minutes on your screen. It might not be, obviously, revenue growth and profit growth. Whatever it is, we need to see those big numbers and we need to see momentum to capture our attention. So we know you're serious players, you're professional, you get it, your deck looks like the deck of a successful company, your numbers look like so many successful companies we've seen, you are following in their footsteps. We're trying to predict where you're going to get to, and we think you look like the successful ones, you sound like the successful ones, you've got the data like the successful ones, although you're a bit earlier, right, we think you'll be one of the successful ones, and that's what it's like. And then the mistake some people put is they put their team right at the start. Now, unless you've got, I don't know, Richard Branson on your board, maybe put the team slide number 10 and have between 10 to 14 slides. I know that's teaching some of you the basics, but it really is that I hate the term investment opportunity, but this company used it and that's okay. Simple, clear, easy on the eyes, one sentence equals one paragraph, really easy, well designed. Again, numbers. Why did I invest in Pocket? Well, the numbers were great. They just look phenomenal. Okay, and again, not one of the Global Entrepreneur Program companies, because we can't invest in our own companies, but just to say what we liked about them. And the Global Entrepreneur Program companies have presentations which just fit into this mold. In fact, we show them all of this and say, right, well, how do you fit in? The exits. Okay, again, big numbers, not their numbers, others in the sector, and you know you've got to show that. You've got to show, well, what makes you think that you'll be as big as some of the biggest ones? Well, because they've gone on before you and they've achieved those exit levels. Again, you can see the numbers. This one's even put 61% gross margin improvement. You might say, well, that's not one of the top numbers that have come to mind. Yeah, the thing is, it's a big number. And so I think to myself, okay, yeah, of course, what's more important is customers joined today, cost of acquiring a customer, etc., P&L, cash flow burn, all of those numbers are important. But they had a big number with gross margin improvement. So fine, put it in there. It's a big number. They've even got a slide literally saying traction. Okay, and that's why, again, I think they've done incredibly well in raising the kind of money that they've raised and the success that they've had. And look, whatever the numbers are, like I said, Elias and the team will send you this later so you can see some of the slides of the successful companies which have raised millions and millions and millions. But I really think it's important to do that. One more thing, I think it's really important when you're raising capital and the scaling, and obviously scaling companies will be raising capital, whether it's from friends and family, whether it's from, as Shantanu said, whether it's from VCs or angels or whatever else. I need to see something like this. What's in it for me? Okay, how much am I getting? Right? And if you can't work this out, then we've got a problem, because if it's just finger in the air saying you're going to get 10%, we think we'll have this in the future. And I say, yeah, what kind of exit value, what kind of IRR am I looking at, or CAGR am I looking at over 4 years? Because I'm comparing your investment with about 50 others, both in the venture sector or angel investments and public investment. So I need to know, well, am I getting more from you? Aren't I? And that's really going to be really important. So if you can't do something like that, that's going to be a problem. Equally, as a British company, so all Global Entrepreneur Program companies are UK companies, we have tax reliefs. And that makes it more interesting for an investor to invest in it, and makes it easier for you to get investment. Because I get tax relief as an investor were I to invest in your company. And therefore, it'd be great if you do the maths for me already, like they've done here. Okay, so I know, oh, actually, I only need to put this in, and I'm getting effectively £10,000 worth of investment at a total risk of just £3,850. You can see why in the UK so many angel companies get so much money. Okay, I think I'm in the last minute of 10 now. And I need you to understand all of these terms. Now, I trained a long time ago as a lawyer, and I hate knowing what all these terms mean. But, you know, if you don't know some of the background of shareholders agreements and investment agreements, then it just makes you look less professional. So please, at least not to the level of a lawyer, but at least have a working knowledge of all of those terms, because they're going to come up. Because I get so many companies asking about all of this, on my website, techtogreat.com, I've put in, for all my Global Entrepreneur Program companies, a whole list of sites in the UK, all the UK VC groups, angel groups, where you can get grants from as a British company, every accelerator, incubator, how to get networking, workspaces, all of those things, put it on there so you don't have to keep sort of repeating all of that. So thank you very much, and I think I've hit my target. That's my 10 minutes. I'll stop sharing. There you go. Hopefully the video will come back on. Can't hear you. I'll reconnect.
Can't hear you, Elias.
Well, on mute.
Can people hear me?
I can.
Aha, great, you can hear me. Okay. Hi everyone, sorry about the technical challenges. So my name is Olivia Sibini. I am also a deal maker. I've got such terrible sound I can barely hear. So apologies. Like Alpesh, I am a deal maker, and I'm sorry I was stuck in a different space, so I'm not sure what Alpesh has covered already, but to give you a quick overview of the Global Entrepreneur Program, we help entrepreneurs from around the world who have innovate IP-rich, high-growth potential to relocate to the UK. Oh God, I'm really sorry, but this sound is so bad. Can people hear me okay? Okay,
I can hear you.
Okay, great. I'll do this so I can't hear myself. So we help innovation-rich, high-growth entrepreneurs to relocate to the UK and set up their global HQ here in the UK. And essentially, deal makers such as Alpesh and I are also entrepreneurs, and so they specifically employ entrepreneurs because we know exactly what it's like to be on that journey and the challenges that you live, and we face exactly the same ones, so we really work as your sort of friends and advisors along the way. And really, what do we offer on the program? We help with, mentoring from experienced entrepreneurs such as ourselves and our network. We help you to develop your business plans with assistance to relocating to the UK, including, importantly, help with the visa application and endorsement. We also, importantly, as entrepreneurs, we always want to have access to networks. So we open doors to the relevant networks that will help you to thrive here in the UK. And importantly, of course, if you are abroad and looking to move to the UK, you already have an international outlook. So we help you to continue to have that international outlook in order to grow internationally. And also just give you continued help from the Department for Business and Trade with other relevant stakeholders once you are in the UK, so thriving in the UK and then looking to export. So what are the kinds of companies that we help? So you need to be have innovative technology and be in the sort of startup and scale up stage. You obviously need to be generating revenues already in your country. You need to commit to relocate your headquarters to the UK, and at least one of the co-founders needs to commit to moving to the UK, which is why I was mentioning earlier that we help with visas. And also, of course, you need to have a strategic plan to build your company in the UK. So we all need to make sure that your company is relevant, that the UK market is relevant for your company, which we can obviously help you with. What do we not support with? So we're really here as your advisors, your connectors, your friends, but we're not here to do the work for you. So of course, you know, you still need to do the work, but we will be there to advise and be a sounding board and introduce you to networks. It's a very, there's a high barrier to entry for the program when you apply, but of course then we select entrepreneurs that we believe have got the nows to be go-getters and to have the tools to succeed here when you are in the UK. So you know, one of the reasons why the UK is really great to work is actually at a really simple administrative level. There's just an incredible ease of doing business here, so it's really easy to set up a company in the UK. It just takes a few minutes. There are incredible tax advantages that incentivize investors to invest into startups, and what that means is that there's a very rich investor ecosystem who are willing to take risks in investing in early stage companies, and that of course feeds into making it a very healthy entrepreneurial ecosystem, which is very collaborative and connected. Now, I know earlier, before we came on, you had great presentations from different people around the regions, talking very specifically about the opportunities across the different, you know, in some of the specific regions. So I'm just going to take a step back and actually just give a quick overview of the top clean tech industry sort of sectors in the UK. So last year, over £3.2 billion was invested into clean tech UK ecosystem, and that is broken down as the top areas is agriculture and food, enabling technologies that enable the other systems, energy and power, materials and chemicals, resources and environment, and transportation and logistics. So those are really the sort of most thriving areas within clean tech in the UK. And then just very quickly, an overview of the types of investment that are available in the UK. Some of them are probably similar to what you have, and some of them might be a bit broader. So we have, you know, a range of accelerators and incubators who are really specialized in so many different areas that can help you to grow. They both invest in early stage companies and provide you access to networks and mentorship. We have a big thriving crowdfunding ecosystem, both in terms of equity as well as debt and reward. We have a very big angel investment network, as I was mentioning with the tax breaks earlier. Of course, venture capital. There's also a lot of corporate venture, so a lot of corporates want to partner with startups in terms of co-creating R&D and innovation, and then building products together. We have a lot of grants and R&D opportunities, which I know were mentioned before we came onto the call. And there's also just a lot of government support from organizations that want to help connect the ecosystem through better collaborations and potentials for R&D and innovation. So that's a sort of quick overview of the types of investment available and the types of organizations that we support.
Fantastic, fantastic. I was just there sitting, taking it all in. It was absolutely fantastic. The depth that we've seen for the startups, scale-ups, and then really investors there. Really just taking, again, just linking back to what we were talking about really here today, and the different offers in the different regions. I have got a couple of questions that I'm almost recycling, if you like, and we can take it in turns going through. We've got about 15 minutes now that we can start tackling a few of these. I think one of the first things, then, just coming back onto what we were saying before, is when we look at the startup, the scale up, and really the investor ecosystems. How is the sustainability offer really for the UK there to really help these core businesses grow? And like I said, we've got the opportunity now to look at that from the startup view, the scale-up view, and really for an investor there. So I don't know who fancies jumping in first.
I'm happy to go. As purely because startups are the first stage of the journey, and then others can fill in. So essentially, the sustainability ecosystem is really very fast growing, and I would say in the UK, I would say there's a few reasons for which that's a really ripe market. Firstly, from a consumer perspective, there's a really high demand from consumers to buy more sustainable products, and for companies to be much more accountable for their sustainability. So that then drives through into the business sector in terms of being able to sort of meet that demand. So on that side, there's a lot of demand. On the other hand, the UK has committed to achieving net zero by 2050, and that means that there's a lot of impetus from the sort of policy and infrastructure perspective in order to push that net zero agenda within companies. And then within that, there's a lot of collaboration available. So both in terms of partnership, as I was mentioning, innovation and R&D, and that is really from the perspective of working with universities, working with corporates, but also startups between themselves. So there are a lot of organizations, in particular in the startup, and Alpesh might comment on the scale-up side, where the organizations essentially bring together an ecosystem of complementary entrepreneurs within a particular space, so that between them they can work together and then have a more complete offering to the wider world. Let's call it, if it's B2B entrepreneurs, then within corporate. So if you look at the agri-tech sector, for example, oftentimes you're looking at systems change, and one single solution might be amazing, but it's not going to be of any help unless it's connected to the rest of the ecosystem. So there's an increasing number of organizations bringing together that ecosystem together, so that as a group you then have a much more complete and compelling offering to go to market. So those are some of the areas in which the different angles in which there's a lot of buoyancy, I guess, and growth in that. I used agri-tech as an example, but same with transport, energy, etc.
Oh, brilliant. That's super interesting. I think that really does set you up then, Alpesh, if there was anything to add on top of that.
Yeah.
Really from the scale-up side of things in there.
Of course. What I'd add to that is this, that
Alpesh?
you're still going to need to be an outstanding company. Liv's absolutely right that there's...
We'll put it down to the computer. Ah, there we go. Here we go. Can you try that again?
You can hear me.
Technical issues. I think we've lost the sound with you.
I can hear you.
I can hear Alpesh.
Okay.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, perfect. I will carry on speaking then.
Excellent.
So, as Liv said, there is demand, and there's a lot of institutions pushing that, especially because UK wants to be a world leader in that space. But you're still going to have to be a quality company. I don't want people to think, oh, come to the UK, it's just easy. It is a lot easier than most countries because of the supply of capital, because of the number of organizations that exist that want you to succeed. Just the infrastructure, the networks are bigger. But you're still going to need to be a quality company. And I assume that everybody who are listening to this are quality companies. So to you, I'd say it makes absolute sense for that reason to be out there. And again, because of the UK's lead on COP, there is a push not just from the private sector of capital, not just from other entrepreneurs, but also from government to make sure those companies are at the front and center and getting the investment they need. And also there's a push from customers, because they know they need to deliver and they need the kinds of services the companies listening to this are providing. And so we need you to get in front of those companies, and it's our job to help that happen and that organic growth happen. So yes, I think all the stars are aligned, and it'd be foolish not to have a base in the UK, given the size of the economy and the policy pushes that are going on at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And I think that leaves then yourself, Shantanu, to really take it from a different angle, really then, really looking from it from the investor side of things. So once you've set up, you've scaled, and then you're looking for a little bit of investment to really pick it up from there.
Sure, yes. So when as companies, we work a lot with companies, as you can imagine, and they're really essentially the deal flow is basically startups in UK. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. So yes, when you are ready to scale up, and in particular, when you are looking to expand into international markets, and perhaps get the support of international institutional investors to help that expansion, to help with the market entry, to gain access and intelligence about the region. That's where we come in, and that's the opportune time to reach out to us. So, as I said before, companies at a scale where they are raising between 5, 4, and 40 million have some revenues, have some traction, the technology is proven, and ideally they have some customers too. So that's the stage at which you reach out to us. But look, these are not hard and fast rules. I mean, like all of us, we love engaging with companies. So do not hesitate to connect, and we can always help you, or at least suggest when you should get in touch again if it is not the appropriate time. But they shouldn't stop anyone from reaching out and trying to connect.
Super. I'm just going to take it one step further and say, perhaps now we can jump into a bit of an example. I know that we had previously heard from a couple of the different speakers about other companies that they've perhaps invested in, but can we perhaps have some concrete examples for those who are listening of some companies that we've actually worked with? And I've got all three of you on my screen now. I don't know who fancies kicking it off. I'll be a gent and let's... oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Alpesh.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of a company called Air for Life. They took some NASA technology, which was used in the space shuttle, to purify air. And they then put it into a whole bunch of different products for use from everywhere from the car, so in a smoggy city like New Delhi, to help purify the air within the small environment you're in, to homes, to warehouses, casinos, those kind of places where large groups of people congregate and you need clean air. And of course, that became incredibly important during COVID to have clean air, let alone what's going on in the world. We help them to get in touch with our various consulates and embassies around the world on exporting. So as I speak, Jay, the founder, is in Thailand. There'll be a whole string of meetings. The British Embassy out of Bangkok will have set up for him. And he's done that out of Hong Kong, out of Singapore, Malaysia, throughout the world, and the US. So being able to get that help of those export advisors within the government to help set up those meetings, I wouldn't say that's the job of the British government to be your business development arm, but my God, it makes a huge difference when the connection comes from a UK government consular or embassy saying, look, we've got this company coming over, they'd like to meet you. And he's been exporting like crazy. In fact, he shifted his manufacturing from China pre-COVID, from China back to the UK, because the demand in Europe was so strong and he wanted to have proximity and greater control over manufacturing and exporting. So there's been lots of wins and advantages that have facilitated, and that's one example that I can give, and lots more besides.
I've got two very leading questions in and around this for you. The first one is really quite a silly one. Is for all of those introductions, how much did they pay? Was there a cost involved or the like? Very leading, I know.
Well, the Global Entrepreneur Program is free. You apply to join, and we look to see if you're a scalable company. So all the services, myself, Liv, the other deal makers, that's all free. When they're doing the exporting part and they're speaking to our embassies and consulates, that's heavily discounted what they have to pay under the sort of an export scheme. And the export advisors are free. So it's negligible what they end up paying. The return on investment is phenomenal. I mean, they're basically paying a heavily subsidized rate for having those introductions, just because there's a little bit of staff time involved in the embassies and consulates. And as I say, even that's heavily, heavily discounted. So it's next to zero.
Brilliant. And I know, apologies, I know that was massively leading you down that route, just because I knew completely what the answer was. The second real add-on in and around that was quite closely tied to a lot of what we'd actually been speaking about here today, is that second point when you said that they reshored, if you like, a lot of their industry. Now, in and around that, did they get any help or support or the like?
Yes. So as you can imagine, different local government authorities have different grant schemes. They have different subsidies when you're hiring people. The Welsh and Northern Irish governments and the Scottish, so the regional governments are very good at that because they have quite a bit of capital. And sadly, everybody always thinks only of London. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but many people think of London, which is flush with companies. But I'd recommend everybody looks at our regions, whether it's Belfast, Edinburgh, or Cardiff, or even anywhere within Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and Northern England as well. And the regions around that, you will get some amazing bargains in terms of local support. So it was also the case for Jay. They had some local support. They were just a little bit outside of London and Milton Keynes. So it wasn't as much as, because he lives there. So it wasn't as much as they would have got, I think, if they were in, say, as I say, a Belfast or a Swansea. But I think it's well worth investigating. And again, the government can help you find the ideal spot for you to manufacture and what the grants and subsidies might be to help facilitate that. Now, ideally, we don't want just companies who are coming for the grants. We want companies to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. But we know it makes a big difference if you're going to have lower cash flow costs, or rather lower cash outgoings as a result of the support you get, even if it's in kind, like office space. So we know it makes a difference just to get the ball rolling. So yeah, do speak to your team out there, or if you're on the Global Entrepreneur Programme, obviously we help with that as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And now I know that's a really hard one to try and follow, but Liv or Shantanu, do you fancy a stab at it?
So no, I wouldn't. It's probably hard to add to what Alpesh has articulated so brilliantly. But the only point I would come back to your question about how much does it cost, and what are our charges, Elias. And as Alpesh said, our services, including the introductions we made to investors, are entirely no cost to either the company or actually to the investor. And so in that sense, we really don't have an agency issue here, or the classic intermediary problem where we are trying to push deals. We share deals because we believe they are good, and our cost is our credibility if we share deals that are not appropriate. So just wanted to add that.
Brilliant. And just as a quick follow-on to that, just in the same way that we just saw, do you have an example of a company or a partner that you'd recently worked with, just so that we can have a bit of a feel of what the process is like at all?
Sure, yes. So there are a few companies that actually we've been working with since the beginning of the year. These are deep tech companies, and the typical process is we either find a company, or the company reaches out to us, or an investor or someone in our network prefers the company. And it's the first step is to usually set up a call with them. And we ask them to fill some basic information, which is for internal process. So essentially just tick box hygiene information about location, HQ, etc. Post that first conversation, we ask them to share some more information about the company, and that's when we do the vetting and selection process. And usually that's a few days. And once that's done, and if you feel this is an appropriate company, we don't take any more of their time. And then it's really down to us to be sharing the deal. And when we get a request from an investor, typically the request falls in 3 categories. It's sometimes that this is not the right one for us, so they pass. But usually it is, we would like to know more. Can you share some more information, or connect us to the company directly? And sometimes they are really excited and just want to straight introduction to the CEO. And we are happy with all of that. And we do that, and then we step aside, because beyond that point, our value add is going to be minimal. So we don't want to be in the middle any longer than necessary. So for the companies, there is no overhead in terms of time spent in connecting with 100 people and then responding to emails and so on. They just reach out to us, let us know what they do, and then give it to us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And then, of course, that brings me over to you, Olivia. Do you have an example
sure.
for me? Oh, brilliant. Thanks.
Yeah. So I guess I will just go into back to agri-tech. Actually, I find it a really interesting high growth area. So there've been a number of companies that we've helped in that area. There's one of them recently called Bionat, which is from Peru, and what they do is they take the agricultural food waste and then turn it into a spray, which becomes a natural protection for fresh produce that is being exported. So it enables sort of removal of plastic or any kind of packaging while increasing the shelf life. And actually what's been interesting is they've connected with a number of organizations across the country, in particular around the sort of Cambridgeshire, Lincolnshire, to east of the country, where there's a lot of food producers as well as a lot of import arriving into the packing stations there, and worked with a number of farmers and importers in that space, as well as being able to connect with local research units there in order to develop bespoke sprays that are adapted to the different types of fresh produce. And actually through that, they've then been able to connect with a better network of growers internationally, because these importers, of course, work sort of obviously importing produce from around the world. So not only is it a link into the UK, but it's actually enabled them to expand naturally their business internationally as a result of those connections there.
Super, super. And now I've got one final question. I know we've got a couple of minutes here. It's a bit of a tricky one, but it's been one that I've been really keen to throw out there. I'm just going to read it out. So this is my Blue Peter one, if you like. That one of the things we've heard a lot about AI and the like in the last couple of weeks. And I know you're thinking AI, but this is a talk about decarbonisation, sustainability and the like. Where does that all play in? But although we've been hearing about generative AI, I can't help but think of interesting areas ahead, and really talking in that sense about quantum tech. So when we start saying that the UK is positioning itself for commercialization of quantum technology, there are many areas that are really being talked about. So encryption, security, and imaging, and the like. There is a big link in there of a potential one to help us in and around this leap towards sustainability. So when you start talking about better batteries and storage and energy, as just really basic examples. Associated with this, this brings me back into this as a talk, and why I think this is a nice session to really bring it up in. There are a number of cooling requirements around and associated with it, short-term ones, long-term ones, and the like. And as we start moving towards this quantum age, there's a massive link with sustainability. I don't know if anyone wants to chime in while we've got 2 minutes to hear your real views about it, to really bring in the broader sense that it's not just when we're talking about sustainability, talking about carbon capture or hydrogen. Super important, but there's the other side in there as well.
There was a great story out of the UK this past week where a company which was actually in data center management, but you can imagine with quantum computing, it's going to have a similar kind of heat production footprint, and they needed cooling for the data centers. So what they did is they put them in a public swimming pool, where in a special facility where the heat from the computers could heat the pool, and at the same time there was a cooling benefit at zero cost for the data centers. Now that's just a tiny little example, but the potential, and almost laughable in a way. It's like, okay, well, why aren't we doing more of this, and why hasn't this come out from places? And in a way, we're not even using the AI's predictive capabilities, data analysis or optimization, all the things that AI can do, which will help in working out how do we deploy clean tech. But I just thought that was an interesting application, which I think we're going to see a lot more of, where we have that symbiotic relationship with almost unconnected areas to make more use of energy, but more use of these various sectors that we didn't have before. And I quite like that story, and I was pleased it was out of the UK. I'm sure there's more out of Europe, but I think it's exciting times with what's happening with AI and quantum computing, which the Chancellor mentioned in his budget yesterday, that they want the UK, and they're putting a few billion into the UK being a leader on quantum computing.
Brilliant, brilliant. And to be honest, it's a session that I could actually spend another half day just talking about on its own. We are pressed for time, but I don't know if very quickly either Shantanu or Olivia wanted to chime in about that. And if not, no worries at all.
I have a quick country to mention, Elias, in context of quantum and emissions and the decarbonization, etc. It's called QLMTech, TEC. It's QLMTEC, one word.com. They use quantum imaging to identify emissions at very large oil and gas facilities. So I would encourage people to check it out. It's a great example of quantum technology being used in traditional technologies for very dramatic improvements. So I just wanted to flag that.
Super interesting. I've noted it down, and I'll be sure to look into it later on. But thank you, first and foremost, thank you to all of the different speakers here for joining today. Super, super interesting. It was really great to come along and really learn a little bit more about what's on offer for startups, scale-ups, and really the investors as well. And now to try and wrap this all up, I've really got a thankless task of trying to summarize all of this. I see ahead of me somebody waving and saying, you know, make a big flag in and around the networking opportunities there following this session. But before we really get into that, a quick note to try and recap on everything that we've seen today. So as a quick one, just pulling up my various notes that I've made. We started the day really hearing from Christina, and Christina Leos was really outlining everything in and around the clean green transition. She not only told us the different priorities and the ambition that we have going forward, but actually laid out the fundamental pathway that the UK has set out to get there via our 10-point plan. We then moved on to look into 3 given regions to really see how that offer really starts to translate into different areas in the UK. We just heard a moment ago from Alpesh that when people think of the UK, they typically think of London. But what we've actually seen earlier on this afternoon is that there are many great opportunities that exist throughout the entirety of the United Kingdom, depending on who you are or what subsector you're actually focusing on. And finally, we've just actually heard in there as well that not only is there support based on the different subsectors of you, but there's also different types of support available for you, depending on the size of your company. You can be a startup, you can be a scale-up, or you can even be an investor, and there's some free, confidential support on offer to help you along the way. I think really the core message that I'm trying to drive home is DBT, the Department for Business and Trade, are here to help and support. Please reach out, please send us a message, and feel free following this session to join in and book in a meeting with any of the speakers who have been here and present today. Thank you everyone for your time and your attention and the many, many questions that I've had. And I look forward to speaking soon. Thank you very much.